Hey, what's up, guys? This is Disaster. Welcome to Smartwater Gate 2021. Now, this originally started with a post about improvised junctional tourniquets or IJTs from a training page called JCrow8404 or 8404, and it included two photos, both of which are not placed in the anatomically correct location and feature water bottles being used as the pressure delivery device or PDD. Now, before I get into the meat and potatoes of this situation, I'd like to mention that the point of this video is not to personally or professionally attack someone and ultimately ruin their lives. This is being done simply because of the possible implications of training individuals utilizing unorthodox methodologies. We are all on the same team. And I appreciate everyone's service, but after major pushback, thinly veiled threats, and him publicly doxing me multiple times, I felt the need to deep dive into this topic. So pour yourselves a Ranger's Delight, grab some popcorn, and get ready for a roller coaster ride that starts from a seemingly innocent training snafu through blindfolds, dodgeball litter drills, and live fire wound packing. Now, this technique or a version of it is not an uncommon treatment of a junctional hemorrhage in the inguinal region, but it's typically used with a rigid device, and the most important part about the intervention is the anatomical placement of it. When someone inquired about the placement of the device on J. Crow's post, he claimed that he knew it was incorrect, despite it not being mentioned in the original post, and that's where I came in. I inquired as to why time in training would be spent purposely practicing not just subpar techniques or improvisation, but completely incorrect techniques, and was met with this response. Now, there's a lot to unpack in this comment that makes absolutely zero sense in terms of normal and effective training methodologies, so we'll break this down. At this point, he states that he only shows them what works and what doesn't work, but why wouldn't you just say that in the post if you knew these were wrong? These are clearly being done by students, and it is not, in fact, being done as a demonstration by the instructors. This is confirmed by multiple other posts from the past showing the exact same thing, with absolutely no mention of this being incorrect and acting as, maybe an educational post to describe failure points. It simply mentions that you should practice improvised techniques, but what is actually displayed is a completely ineffective and improperly placed intervention that would result in the casualty bleeding to death. Then he says that he has students do drills with COTC-approved tourniquets and non-approved tourniquets to show them what works and what fails. But that defies even the most basic common sense test. Why would you have students knowingly train with something that you know is going to fail, or even mention it to them in the first place, let alone practice with them? Just have them spend the whole time on what does work. This approach is how bad habits, training scars, and poor muscle memories develop, and it's also just plain out confusing for the students. And now we get into training with purposely placed fake tourniquets to show them why that's not okay. You don't need to waste money and time training with fake tourniquets in some gotcha scenarios. Just tell the students to buy straight from reputable sources. They'll believe you, and you could spend that time doing good reps with real tourniquets. And lastly, he goes on to mention something that I completely agree with, which is watching real-world videos and conducting a class-wide peer review of what happened. While learning has occurred in this modality, it is not the same as the actual individuals in the course practicing the wrong thing on purpose just to peer review on the back end on why it's wrong. Either way, he ends up disabling the comments after this response, edits the caption on the post to include something like, "Yeah, we trained to fail, so we know what works," and blocks me. At this point, I basically have to make my post so that I can respond to him. So I do that. And, if he just admitted that the intervention was improperly placed and that they'll correct it in the future, then this would not have ever even happened. But something about the actual explanation really struck a chord with me. Do you really demonstrate and practice failure in training to prove a point? Because that is directly against all realistic and accepted versions of high-level programs of instruction. In regards to motor skills and function, training what wrong looks like so that you know what right looks like is completely backwards. You train to what right looks like so you know what wrong is. This is especially important in regards to pre-hospital medicine because people's lives are potentially at stake. The simple fact of the matter is that most students are leaving a TCCC or TECC or a Stop the Bleed course not even close to having a mastery of the basics. So if you spend half of that time doing the wrong thing, they're even less prepared. And so at this point, I'd like to just do some basic peer review of different things in classes. In this video, the students are doing a Polis litter drill while other students throw dodgeballs at them. Not exactly sure what the point of this is or what the learning objectives are. From an overall program standpoint, there should be an objective reason through every phase of the course for why you're doing something. And in others, individuals throw dodgeballs at each other while conducting a trauma lane of some sort. The students seem completely lost in what to actually do in this situation, aimlessly run around. So it begs the question, what is the objective of throwing balls at them? Is this supposed to be a culminating event in the run phase of the course? And if that's the case, then why do the students look like they've never done anything? I understand the stress-inducing aspect of sitting there, trying to do a March assessment, while the threat of being pegged in the face by a dodgeball looms over you, but these students aren't even ready for that. It's also important to note that this absolutely would not fly at a professional warfighting organization. If you hit a random SEAL on the head with a dodgeball while they were doing a trauma lane, you'd be laughed out of the compound after getting your ass beat. And next, we have a live fire exercise while students practice packing a wound cube really fast.
Go! Hurry up! Hurry up! Hurry up! Pack those wounds! Go! Pack those wounds! Let's go! Hurry up! Let's go! Hurry up!
At face value, it looks real high speed, but in reality, this is a pointless exercise that is reinforcing bad habits and encouraging poor technique, and with the overall major focus on going fast instead of training to standard. Honestly, this is just a gross misinterpretation of the crawl, walk, run approach to training. You don't need to apply it to each individual part task, because the next thing you'll know, you'll have students doing live fire NPA drills, and that's just objectively wrong. This also builds the incredibly unwise habit of ignoring gunfire going off right next to your head just to pack a wound with questionable standards. The only thing you should be practicing in this phase of care is getting in the fight or moving the casualty and yourself to cover. Honestly, if you wanted to do training like this, it isn't even a good way to approach it. A better way would have half the class doing an actual beneficial live fire drill while the other half focuses on good packing principles rooted in reality, like pulling the gear out of a patient's IFAC while the casualty's on the ground type of scenario. But I digress. This type of training should be viewed in a risk versus reward on a statistical basis, like the most dangerous course of action, right? On one hand, we have the argument of, well, I've packed a wound while gunfire was happening and it was fine, so people should be comfortable doing it. But on the other hand, you have the students developing muscle memory for them to get comfortable with sustained close quarters gunfire, which allows you to get sucked into the casualty, resulting in a general lack of awareness and ultimately ends with you getting shot. And at that point, you're just a poorly trained goofball. We have 2 casualties instead of 1, and you've put the rest of the force at even more risk. So the obvious way to train is to the most dangerous course of action that focuses on overall force protection and developing habits that reinforce that. This same mentality can be applied to all aspects of training. Don't train for the most statistically unlikely events. Train for the likely ones, because those will save the most amount of people. And then you can, add in some improvisation once the students demonstrate proficiency. There's countless other videos on the page depicting substandard intervention practices, whether it be packing principles, Crike technique, and needle decompression practice on ribs over a pool toy. These are all fine or whatever, but the point I want to bring up is that when you're training with different modalities, it's of the utmost importance to train people medicine. I'm totally aware that certain organizations do not have the funding or means learning on anatomically correct mannequins, high fidelity simulators, or live patient models, but When you're using things that are objectively fake in nature, like wound cubes, it's paramount that students are held to the human medicine standard while performing this skill. This mentality must be applied across all spectrums of care. The overall goal is always to practice human medicine with the associated technique and principles on a patient role model, not the other way around. You don't want students doing role model medicine on humans because then they'll die. Blindly packing holes in meat, standing in front of trachea boxes where the actual patient's body would be, and stabbing slabs of ribs through pool toys with no anatomical landmarks is not real medicine. But poorly developed training programs around them can have real implications. It's important to note that this ad hoc approach to training is prevalent across multiple institutions. This is not just a J. Crow thing. More emphasis is oftentimes placed in theatrics or cool stuff over logical progression, on the spot corrections, and mastery of the basics. The military is notorious for taking this approach to training unknowingly and to the detriment of the actual individuals participating in the exercise. But you don't know what you don't know, so you walk away saying, that was crazy. The problem is, was it actually good, no shit, effective training that you walked away from as a more well-rounded warfighter and or medical provider? Probably not. In most cases, you were ill-prepared, performed average or subpar, and spent hours reinforcing bad habits just in an effort to survive. But the lights were off and death metal was playing and there was like a crying baby, so that was cool. Now, don't get me wrong. Unwinnable scenarios are absolutely appropriate. They just need to be introduced during the right phase of instruction or with an appropriately competent operational element. And the points of failure that you will be attacking need to be explicitly known by the instructor, staff, or white cell. For example, we'll be taxing the logistics and manning of an element with just a downed rotary wing mass cow. No contact, no theatrics, just fly in, secure the incident site, treat the casualties, fly out. Cannot accurately identify the failure points and objectives of a specific exercise or scenario, you have no business running a course of instruction. Jumping the gun on this is usually done out of ease of use. Instructors make every scenario unwinnable due to sheer incompetence, and it's likely they grew up on that as well. Ultimately, what you're trying or what you're aiming to avoid is starting off with a VBID initiated L-shaped ambush at night resulting in 10 casualties and them coming off target with an AAR the size of Wyoming, and the failure points get lost in the sauce. The name of the game is to set the boys and girls up for success. I don't know how many times I've seen this approach over the years when, a senior NCO wants the element to run a lane simply to, feel the pain, then do a POI, and then run the lane again. To which I always respond, why not just do the class beforehand and then they get 2 good runs in? Natural and logical progression is your friend, and adhering to a true version of crawl, walk, run is absolutely paramount. A common misconception perpetuated by instructors is that you learn through failure, and while that may be partially true in some cases, it doesn't apply to actually learning a specific skill. Especially if there's a subject matter expert right there who knows the proper technique and principles necessary to be successful. Time is better spent doing the right thing from the start, and it's important that instructors hold students to a rigid and almost militant standard through every phase of instruction when demonstrating proficiency. This is most easily achieved through a swift, on-the-spot corrections while training. This approach means that more time is spent doing the right thing as opposed to doing the wrong thing for 15 minutes and then talking about it afterwards. More often than not, courses that produce subpar results in regards to student performance are simply because there is never any clearly established guidelines and learning objectives expressed by the instructors before each part task event. Increased student performance is achieved through instructor-led demonstrations, walkthrough talkthroughs, and clear and concise briefs. Additionally, crawl, walk, run in regards to TCCC training is grossly misinterpreted. This results in external stressors being applied too early into training when in reality the students are still in the crawl or walk phase, which is when all of the focus should be placed on perfect practice. External stressors should only start being introduced into training during the run phase of instruction. A more appropriate approach to building a course should be viewed like crawl is your didactic, so your PowerPoint, your videos, your why. Why do we do things like this? Your walk is your individual skills stations where you focus on specific injury or specific treatment of injuries, and your run phase, like your off the X drills into full march assessments. Then you can start to introduce stressors into the mix, like low light, yelling, adding more injuries, gunfire, logistics constraints, etc. And when you do introduce stressors, try to only add one per iteration so you can track failure points. This also allows you to accurately scale training based on performance, either by ramping it up, or dialing it down. So a basic quick overview of how I would approach a portion of a course, and say we start progressing through the walk phase and into the run phase, or putting it all together. I like to split it up by phase, and furthermore, by individual line items in the assessment. For example, I start by getting the students into buddy pairs, then identifying the operator and the casualty. The operators then get online, mirroring their casualty, and then face away. I walk the line, giving every casualty the same exact injury, a simple extremity hemorrhage, and then initiate the run with contact man down. The students then demonstrate the exact thing I just demoed for them previously. So they turn around, they yell contact, bang, 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 say troops in contact, initiate a call out. Hey, buddy, can you hear me? Crawl to me, shoot back, put on your own tourniquet, security push out, and then move on to the casualty. Then they perform a one-man kit drag to standard back to their starting location, perform a tourniquet, and then call up, this is me, be advised, eagle down, requesting 9-line TACAVAC, stand by for first 5 and a miss report. And then they stop. I inspect the tourniquet. I tell them to reset and switch roles, and then we run the same thing again. On the next run, I'll add in the rest of M, and on the next one, I'll add in A, and on the next one, I'll add in R, and then the necessary communication aspects to, like the 9-line and miss report, and so on and so forth until they've ran the whole assessment from start to finish, and a fully packaged casualty is ready to move into PZ posture and a handoff is performed. Utilizing this approach means that students are getting multiple perfect repetitions on every previous aspect of the assessment, which exponentially increases the amount of repetitions they're getting. And when you do add something in, it's only one aspect and it's never overwhelming. Once we have reached this point, now we can start to add in scenario-based runs, external stressors, multi-system trauma patients, etc. No fluff, no bullshit, no gotcha scenarios, litter obstacle courses, improvising with things out of the trash, pool toys, or dodgeballs. Just good, no shit reps that are relevant, based in reality, and are going to keep the most amount of people alive in a statistical sense. So as you can see, this isn't just a difference in methodologies between another individual and I that produces the same results. If you took two students, one trained in the aforementioned way and one who learned via unorthodox methods, and ran them through the same exact lane with a fully stocked IFAC, you're going to get vastly different results in performance, and that's the issue I have with it at the end of the day. Anyways, I'm sure y'all are tired of listening to me talk, so I'm going to wrap this up. Here's the deal, and I mean this in the most sincere way. You are not owed, nor do you rate anything just based on virtue alone. You are only as good as you are right this second. Past achievements and experiences are meant to facilitate growth, strengthen your resolve, and ultimately help you evolve into a more well-rounded individual. They're not meant to be leaned on or used as a crutch when times get tough, when people start sharpshooting you. If you consider yourself to be a subject matter expert, then be a subject matter expert. Telling me to post my certs or shut the fuck up and then actually trying to dox me from those certs is the saddest shit I've ever seen. I appreciate everyone hanging out till the end. I hope you all stay safe in the future. Don't hesitate to reach out, and I'll catch you on the back end.